Chalo, let's start with the revision of this registration thing. Okay, first thing that we studied here was the basic introduction. First of all, what was the benefit of getting yourself registered? What was the benefit? That you can issue tax invoices, you can start collecting taxes from any other person, and whatever are your inward supplies, whatever are your purchases, on such purchases, you can avail the input tax credit subject to the input tax credit provisions. Okay, then we discussed about registration under GST. So it is not a centralized registration. You will have to obtain state-wise registration in all those states from wherever you are making a taxable supply. Okay, then this registration is going to be PAN based. Okay, if I am having, single person is having same PAN. Okay, so wherever that particular person is having his offices in all those states or union territories, he will have to get his a registration, but provided he is making a taxable supply from all of those places. If I am having multiple places in one state, okay, Mumbai, Pune, both places of business in Maharashtra only, then I've got options. Either I can obtain a single registration. If I'm obtaining a single registration for Maharashtra, then one office will be shown as principal place of business, another office will be shown as additional place of business. Alternatively, I can obtain two separate registrations even within the same state, one for Mumbai and another one is for Pune. Okay, this we had studied in our introduction part. Then going on to the next part where we discussed about definitions. In definitions, one of the most important definition here is of the taxable person. Okay, rest definitions you can manage. The most important definition here was of the taxable person, which we have seen in detail also. In case of taxable person, three persons will be included. First one, any person who has got himself registered. Okay, second one, any person who is liable to get registered. Liability khadi ho chuki hai uske registration ki, but he has not yet taken the registration, but he is liable. Even that person will be called as a taxable person. And the third one, any person who has done a voluntary registration, maybe even if the threshold limit has not exceeded, still he has got himself registered. That thing is called as a voluntary registration, and that will be included in the concept of taxable person. Then three most important sections of the chapter 23, 24, 22, 23 and 24. Okay, I am starting with section number 22, which talks about persons liable to registration. Now they are telling that any particular person who is providing goods or services, any person who is supplying goods or services or both, that person will have to get himself registered. Okay, provided now he will have to get registered in each of the states or union territories from where he is making a taxable supply, provided his aggregate turnover exceeds the threshold limit in the current financial year. Okay, now ma'am, what do you mean by aggregate turnover? Aggregate turnover will include my intrastate supply, export supplies. Okay, then it will also include my your exempt supplies, taxable as well as everything will be included for the purpose of calculating the aggregate turnover. Okay, plus minus, but it will not include the GST taxes. Okay, CGST, SGST, UTGST, IGST, GST compensations, this will not be included. My inward supplies on which I have paid the taxes, my inward supplies on which the tax is payable under reverse charge mechanism, that will not be included. Okay, because that is my inward supply, that is not my turnover, so that will not form part of my aggregate turnover. Now ma'am, this aggregate turnover, are we supposed to take of the state or are we supposed to take it on all India basis? This has to be taken on all India basis for that same PAN. Can we say PAN is same for all India registration? So full aggregate turnover will be considered here. Okay, now just try to understand here, for the purpose of aggregate turnover, we are taking the exempt supplies also. Don't do a mistake here. Okay, but the state from where we are making exempt supply, in that particular state, we are not required to take the registration. But when we are taking registration for other state, we have to include the total turnover. We have to take the aggregate turnover. Okay. Then after that, we had studied two separate points here. One was about agent. Okay, if there is an agent who is making supplies on behalf of the principal and he is making supply on his own account, then full turnover will be taken for the purpose of calculating aggregate turnover. Next point that we had studied was for that job worker. Okay, if I have given if I want to sell my goods to the customer, but in between the work will be completed by the job worker, means I am sending the goods to the job worker who will complete the job, and I am telling the job worker, instead of sending the goods to me, you directly send it to my customer. Then in that case, it will not be included in the turnover of the job worker. It is my turnover. It will be included in the main person's turnover. right? This is what we had studied. Aggregate turnover definition we had seen in composition scheme also. In that particular chapter, we had calculated the aggregate turnover also, and we had calculated turnover in the state also. For the purpose of composition levy, calculating the taxes, we were taking turnover in the state. Okay, but turnover in the state is not to be taken in this chapter at all. In this chapter, we have to just take the aggregate turnover for the purpose of determining the threshold limit. Okay. Then after that, ma'am, what is the threshold limit now? What aggregate turnover should be exceeded if I want to get myself registered? Okay, now what is the threshold limit? Now let's keep it very, very simple. By default provision, okay, if I'm providing goods or if I'm providing services or if I'm providing goods or services, then they are telling that 20 lakh is the threshold limit. Means if my turnover exceeds 20 lakh, I have to get myself registered. But if I am situated in 4 special category states, that is Mizoram, Manipur, Tripura and Nagaland, then instead of 20 lakhs, the limit for me will be 10 lakh rupees. Okay, this is the by default, 10 lakh for those 4 states, rest of the states will be 20 lakhs. Okay, then government came up with an exemption and it said that, okay, if you are providing only goods, okay, if you are providing only goods, then instead of 20 lakhs, your limit can go up to 40 lakhs. But provided I am providing only what? If I am providing only goods. Okay. Now, in that case, instead of 20 lakhs, your limit will go to 40 lakhs. But if you are situated in those 4 states, the limit will still be 10 lakh rupees only. Okay, this is what we had studied. But then later we studied some 4 exceptions. We studied some 4 exceptions for this 40 lakhs. Okay, by default 40 lakhs was applicable, but now in these 4 cases 40 lakhs will not apply. First one, if I am eligible for compulsory registration under section 24. Okay, if I am eligible for compulsory registration, then I don't have to check the threshold at all. Then obviously 40 lakh limit will not apply. Okay, second one, if I am engaged in supplying some specific category of goods, pan masala, tobacco, ice cream, fly bricks, building bricks and all those things, both trading, manufacturing, etc., 40 lakh limit is not at all applicable to me. Third one, if I am situated in 10 states, okay, if I am situated in 10 states, out of 10 you already know 4, Manipur, Mizoram, Manipur, Nagaland, Tripura, for them the limit will be 10 lakhs, and for rest 6 states, that is Arunachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Meghalaya, Sikkim, Tripura and Puducherry. For these 6 states also 40 lakh limit is not applicable for goods, instead 20 lakh limit will apply. Okay, so if I want to summarize for goods, okay, only for goods. See, for services and for goods and services, the limit was very simple. For services and for goods and services, it was 10 lakhs for those 4 states and 20 lakhs for everyone else. When we come to goods, for 4 states, it will always be 10 lakhs. For the rest 6 states, AUM, STP, OM stop, remember, Arunachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Meghalaya, Sikkim, Telangana and Puducherry, for them instead of 40 lakhs it has become 20 lakhs, and for all the other states, remaining states, the benefit is going to go to 40 lakhs, right? Okay, now this we are talking about the intrastate supply done in these 10 states. Ma'am, why did you consider only intrastate supply? Because interstate supply anyway comes under compulsory registration, and for them anyway threshold limit is not applicable. And the last 4th exception was if any person had got himself voluntarily registered, then 40 lakh limit is not applicable to that particular person. Okay, so these were the 4 exceptions. I'll repeat the 4 exceptions. First one was any person eligible for compulsory registration. Okay, next one was specified products, supplying specified products. Third one was any person making intrastate supply in those 10 states. Okay, bifurcation of 10 states, 6 states, 20 lakh limits, 4 states, 10 lakh rupees limit. And last one, 4th one is any person who is voluntarily registered will not get the benefit of this 40 lakhs. Are you clear till here? Yes, these were the basic things that we had studied under section number 22 in the first point. Then we went to the second and the third point, which was very, very simple. Whenever we are obtaining the registration, we have to check that from which place are we providing the service, there. From which place are we supplying the goods or service, there only registration is required. Not the state where we are providing the goods or services. Okay, it is the place from where you are providing, there you have to get yourself registered, and that place has to be your fixed establishment, right? Acha, then one very important thing here, we had discussed a point that if let's say for services. Okay, let's say for services, if I'm providing services, if I have my place of business in any of those 4 places, then the threshold limit for registration will become 10 lakhs. Okay, it will get reduced to 10 lakhs. Let's say my principal place of business is in Maharashtra, and my one of the another additional place of business, or my another place of business is in Tripura, for example. Then in that case, since one of my branches is situated in those 4 category of states, my threshold limit will come down to 10 lakhs. Okay, but what if I'm providing exempt supply from those 4 states, or non-taxable supply from those 4 states? Let's say I'm providing liquor, or let's say I'm providing petrol from those 4 states. Then in that case, my threshold limit, anyway, I don't have to obtain registration in that state because I'm providing a non-taxable supply. So my threshold limit won't come down to 10 lakhs. This point we had studied here in the second point, right? Because why? Normally, if I have one of my branches in those 4 category states, my aggregate turnover threshold limit will come down to 10 lakhs. But if I'm doing only non-taxable supply from those states, then my threshold limit won't get reduced to 10 lakhs. It will be dependent upon the other state. And the last third point was, whenever there is any change, whenever there is any transfer of business, and in that case, the transferee is required to get the registration. In case of death, etc., the registration will be effective from the date of such transfer. In case of merger amalgamation, the registration will be effective from the date of incorporation, which has been provided by the certificate of incorporation given by the ROC. Okay, then going on to the next section, that is section number 24. Okay, 22 was persons liable to get themselves registered. Now we are going to section number 24, which talks about compulsory registration. What did we study in compulsory registration? In compulsory registration, irrespective of the threshold limit, you have to get yourself compulsorily registered. 12 points were discussed in this. First point of compulsory registration, any person making interstate supply. Okay, compulsory registration is required, but 3 exceptions: interstate supply of services, handicraft goods, handmade goods. If you are dealing into any 3, interstate supply of services, supply of handicraft goods, or supply of handmade goods, for these 3, compulsory registration is not required till the time you don't exceed the threshold limit. Okay, then next one, threshold limit 20 lakhs or 10 lakhs as the case may be. Second one, CTP, compulsory casual taxable person, compulsory registration is required. 2 exception, handicraft, handmade. For these 2 things, till the aggregate threshold limit does not exceed the limits, no registration is required. Okay, but CTP providing any other goods or services, compulsory registration is required. Okay, then reverse charge. Inward supply is liable for reverse charge. Then I only have to pay the taxes to the government. Compulsory registration is required. NRTP, non-resident taxable person coming from outside India to India and supplying the goods. Compulsory registration. Next one, important amendment. Okay, e-commerce operator. Any e-commerce operator who is required to collect TCS has to get himself compulsory registered. Okay, any person providing goods or services through e-commerce operator. Okay, then in that case, compulsory registration was there, but exception was provided to the persons who were providing services only through e-commerce operator to the customer. To them, threshold limit was applicable. Means up to threshold limit, no compulsory registration. Beyond threshold limit, compulsory registration was applicable, but this relief was provided only for the purpose of services. Okay, then in this case, now they have come up with the amendment because there was some biasness which was done with persons who were just providing goods through eco. The persons who were providing goods through e-commerce operator to the customer, they were not given any exemption, and for them compulsory registration was applicable. So now we have told them, okay, even these people will be getting the benefit up to the threshold limit. That is, they are not required to get themselves registered till the turnover exceeds the threshold limit, provided they should not be engaged in doing any interstate supply, and they should obtain enrollment number from the GST portal. Enrollment number is not registration number. They have to obtain an identification number called as enrollment number, and on that basis only they can do the transactions with the eco. Ecos are also required to make sure that the suppliers do not do interstate supply. Ecos will not collect the TCS till the threshold limit. Ecos will provide the details of the PAN of such unregistered person while filing their GSTR 8. Means the responsibility has been put on whom? The responsibility has been put on the Eco, so that the person who is providing the goods gets the benefit of not registering himself up to the threshold limit. Then next one, any person who has registered himself under GST any person who is required to deduct TDS, that person has to get himself separately registered for the purpose of deducting TDS. Then agent, any person who is providing goods on his own account or on behalf of any other person, that person has to get himself registered, provided the principal is a taxable person, provided they are supplying taxable goods only, and the invoices have been issued in the name of agent. Next one, ISD, when he is formed for distributing the credit, he has to get himself separately registered as an ISD. Any person providing OIDR services from outside India, Netflix to any unregistered person, he will have to get himself compulsorily registered. Any person paying taxes, liable to pay taxes under section 9(5), reverse charge, 4 points, that person will have to get himself registered. Then new point added, any person providing online money giving services from outside India to India, that person will have to get compulsory registered, or any other person as notified by the government. These persons will have to get themselves compulsorily registered irrespective of the turnover. Yes, for some points they have given the threshold limit. Example, for interstate services, handicraft goods, handmade goods, they have given the threshold. For CTP, they have given the threshold. Persons supplying goods or services through ECO, they have given the threshold. But for other points, you are not required to check the threshold at all. Right? And one more extra point that they had given here in the amendment was, if now because of the amendment, even the persons who are registered under composition scheme, they can start providing goods through ECO. Okay, they can start supplying goods through ECO. So if such persons who were there under composition, if these persons, if they are providing goods through e-commerce operators, then again the responsibility will come on the e-commerce operator, that they will have to make sure that these composition dealers, these composition taxpayers are not doing any interstate supply. ECO is collecting the TCS from them and paying it to the government, and ECO will furnish all their details in GSTR 8 electronically, because now they have allowed, earlier it was not allowed, now they have allowed the composition taxpayers to provide the goods through e-commerce operators. So that can be provided, but a track on the turnover needs to be kept, right? So that information will be furnished by the ECOs while filing their GSTR 8. Right? And the last section that we did there was section number 23, that is persons not liable for registration, which I had summarized here. Section 23(1) and section 23(2). 23(1) only 2 pointers. First one, any person doing non-taxable supply, exempt supply, nil rated supply, etc., he is not required to get himself registered. And second one was any agriculturist, individual or HUF person who is supplying any produce which was cultivated by him from land. This person need not get himself registered. But if this agriculturist is engaged into any other activity, potato wafers, tomato sauce, packing, pre-packaging and all those things, then in that case he will be liable for registration. Then we went to section number 23, subsection 2. 23(2) said, was talking about 5 pointers. Most of it we have already studied. First one, any person who is doing outward supplies, only such supplies which are liable for reverse charge. Only such supplies which are liable for reverse charge. So his liability is not at all there, because if it is liable for reverse charge, only the recipient will be liable to pay the taxes to the government. So this person who is providing these supplies, example GTA, this person need not get himself registered. Second one, interstate supplies, up to threshold limit, no compulsory registration. CTP for handicraft and handmade, up to threshold limit, no compulsory registration. Interstate supply of handicraft goods and handmade goods, up to threshold limit, no compulsory registration. And the last one, any person providing goods or services through ECO, up to threshold limit, no compulsory registration. Are you understanding this? Yes, these are the pointers that we studied in section number 23. Are you understanding till here? Okay, so we started with this procedure for registration, which is going to be contained in section number 25, 26 and 27, where we are going to study different procedures about how to apply for registration, what all documents are required, which form are we going to submit, when are we supposed to apply for registration, Then how will the proper officer check whether our registration documents etc. are proper or not, and then issuance of the registration certificate. All these things are going to be covered in section number 25, 26 and 27. As of now, we are starting with section number 25 along with some CGST rules. Okay, in that, first thing that we're going to study is when are we supposed to apply for registration. So registration normally it has to be applied within a time period of 30 days from the date when we become liable for registration in every such state or union territory from where we are providing taxable supply. Okay, if we are providing any services in territorial waters, then whatever is the nearest baseline, okay, in that particular state, we have to go and apply for the registration, same within a time period of 30 days. But if you are a CTP or if you are a NRTP, then in that case, you have to apply the registration at least 5 days prior to the commencement of business. Okay, this was a different procedure that they had given. Then we went to the next point, which was talking about state-wise registration, part of which we have already discussed. One state, one registration. But suppose if I have multiple offices in one state, then GST department says, okay, no problem. Since multiple offices are there within the same state, apply for one registration. One office will be shown as principal place of business, another office will be shown as additional place of business. But if you want to apply for separate registration for different place of business even within the same state or union territory, you can do that, no problem. Okay, we have already considered the example of that also. Then we discussed about composition levy. In case of composition levy for separate businesses, if I have got multiple place of businesses, if I have got multiple place, okay, then in that case, one office opting for composition scheme, one office opting for normal scheme, totally not allowed. Either everyone will go for normal scheme or everyone will go for composition scheme. This is what we have already studied also. Voluntary registration, section 25, subsection 3. Now, if I was not at all liable for registration under section 22, nor I am falling under the compulsory registration points of section number 24, still I say that I want to get myself voluntarily registered, no problem, welcome, you can get yourself voluntarily registered, but then don't ask for threshold limits. Okay, threshold limits will not be applicable for you. Distinct person, establishment of distinct persons, etc. Yes, separate registrations will be required, that we have already studied. For doing the registration, PAN is mandatory because that becomes the base for applying for registration. But in case of NRTP, in case of persons applying online gaming services, other PAN is not mandatory. On the basis of other documents also registration will be granted. Any person who is getting registered for the purpose of deducting TDS or for the purpose of collecting TCS, if they have tax deduction or tax collection number instead of PAN, then even that is sufficient. Are you clear with this? Then we studied about UIN, unique identity number, where we studied that if there are any specialized agencies or if there are any notified organizations or consulates or embassy, okay, of other countries, obviously, and if they are, if they are purchasing some goods here in India, or if they are availing some services here in India, they will be paying taxes, they will be paying GST here in India. So they will want refund of that. If you want refund of some notified supplies of goods or services, then first they will have to go and apply for UIN, unique identity number, from the GST portal, which is, you cannot call those persons as a registered person, but it is not considered as a registered person, and therefore it will not be considered as a, therefore such persons will also not be considered as a taxable person also. Okay, this number just makes them eligible to apply for refunds. Okay, that's it. And for that, whenever they make an application for this UIN, we will provide them within a time period of 3 working days. Right? Acha, now let's say if we did not apply for registration, can the proper officer suo moto give me the registration? Answer is yes. Let's say I was liable, I was eligible for registration, but I did not apply, and the officers conducted inquiry, inspection, survey, etc. in my business, and they came to know that I should be registered, then they will issue me a temporary registration for the time being, and they will pass an order on me. Okay, then after that, if I am of the opinion that yes, registration is required, then I will normally go and apply for a registration within a time period of 90 days. Okay, or if I say that no, I object to the proper officer, then I can go and file an appeal with the appellate authority, and whatever decision comes, the decision of appellate authority will be full and final. If appellate authority says that okay, you are not liable for registration, then okay, I am not liable. But if appellate authority says that no, Arpita, you are liable for registration, then I will have to apply for registration within a time period of 30 days from the date of issue of appellate authority's order. Okay. And then after that, we started with the procedure for registration. In case of procedure for registration, they had told that it is given in rule number 8, 9 and 10. We are going to use a form called as GST REG 01, which is divided into two parts, part A and part B. Part A was talking only about the PAN validation. Yes, and part B is going to contain all the other details that we will just see now. Okay, now this form GST REG 01 is applicable to normal all the persons, plus it is applicable for composition persons also, plus it is applicable for CTP also, plus it is applicable for voluntary registration also. Okay, but for NRTP, TDS, TCS, OIDAR, online gaming, for these they have provided separate methods of doing the registration. Okay, then two different points that we studied along was, one was for SEZ and the other one was for ISD. For SEZ, we studied that if one unit is situated in SEZ and if another unit was situated, is situated in non-SEZ or outside the SEZ area, then in that case, even if it is situated within the same state, you have to obtain two different registration, because one is in SEZ and another one is in non-SEZ. Then the next one is about the ISD. In case of any person who wants to distribute the credit, that person, if he wants to become a ISD input service distributor, if he wants to follow this ISD mechanism, he will have to obtain a separate registration as ISD. And then we started with the procedure. In procedure, part 1 was our part 2 was department's part. Okay, in part 1, first of all, PAN was mandatory. Okay, so we are going to put our PAN and the state in part A of that GST REG 01 form, that will get validated from the CBDT website, from the database. Then they will take the fetch the mobile number and email address, and the OTP will be sent once that is validated. Okay, after that you will be given a TRN, temporary reference number, that will be communicated to you. Using this TRN, you can fill the other part B of your GST REG 01 form, in which you will put all the other details as asked: place of business, additional place of business, reason of getting the registration, when did you commence your business, and all these things will be put in the part B. And once you have submitted this, after this an acknowledgement will be sent to you electronically. Okay, but one exception that we studied here was in case of CTP. Whenever they are submitting this application, they have to also pay some advance tax. Okay, estimated advance tax of GST, not income tax, advance tax of GST they have to pay, and only after that an acknowledgement will be sent to them. Okay, once all these things is done, your application goes to the proper officer, and then the proper officer will start with the proceedings. Okay, then we studied about these proceedings in part 2. Okay, if the proper officer is of the opinion that everything is proper, and if you have even done the Aadhaar authentication, okay, Aadhaar authentication with Aadhaar OTP, Aadhaar based OTP, etc., then in that case registration will be granted to you within a time period of 7 working days, but only after Aadhaar authentication is done. If suppose Aadhaar authentication is not done, okay, then in the or let's say you did Aadhaar authentication, but proper officer thinks that site verification, physical verification is required, or if Aadhaar authentication is done, but on the basis of risk parameters, it has been identified by the GST portal to conduct your site verification, then in such cases can we say physical verification will be done mandatorily. So they are telling that registration will be granted to you within a time period of 30 days of application, but only after doing the site verification, right? And this was when the documents were proper. Okay, what if the documents are not at all proper? Then the proper officer will issue you a notice asking for clarifications, informations, documents, etc. from you. Suppose if site verification was required, then proper officer will ask you within a time period of 30 days from submission of application. If other authentication was done, then it will ask you the information within a time period of 7 days from the date of submission of the application form. Once they issue me a notice, I have to reply them back within a time period of 7 working days. Okay, if I don't reply, okay, then they will reject my application. If I reply, but that is a nonsense reply, unsatisfactory reply, again they have the rights to cancel my application. If I reply and that is a satisfactory reply, then within the next 7 days the proper officer will have to grant me the registration. If it does not grant me within the next 7 days, it is considered as deemed approval. Okay, in case of Aadhaar authentication, within 7 days it should be done. If not done, deemed approval. In case of physical site verification, it was supposed to be done within a time period of 30 days. If not done, deemed approval. Are you clear with this? Yes? Okay, going on to the next part, I'm revising this Aadhaar authentication in completely now. Now we had already studied about Aadhaar authentication that is mandatorily required. Okay, now you have the option to choose. Okay, if you're choosing the option whether you want to go for Aadhaar authentication or not. First they say that it is mandatory. Okay, it is mandatory for new applicants also. It is also mandatory for the existing applicants. Okay, for both of them it is mandatory. Now how it is to be done? Okay, now the procedure varies. If you are a new registrant, then the procedure will vary. If you are an existing applicant, then the procedure will vary. Suppose if you are a new person, then in that case, when you are filing your GST REG 01, at that time you have the option to choose whether you want to go for Aadhaar authentication or you don't want to go for Aadhaar authentication. If you say that yes, you want to go, then the Aadhaar authentication link will be sent to your mobile number and to your email ID which you had provided at the time of GST registration. Then once you open that link, you will put your Aadhaar number there. Aadhaar OTPs will be sent to your mobile number and email address, and if you feed that OTP, then the Aadhaar authentication is done. This Aadhaar authentication has to be done for two persons. One is let's say if it is a proprietorship, then of that individual person. If it is a partnership, then any one of the partner. If it is a company, then it has to be done of the promoter, or if it has to be done of one whole-time director. Okay, so one person either from the owner or one person from the management. Okay, that is one person whose Aadhaar authentication will be done, and yes, along with that one primary authorized signatory, that person. So this way two persons Aadhaar authentication has to be done, and if he has successfully done this Aadhaar authentication, then within a time period of 7 days, okay, within a time period of 7 days, his application, his registration will be deemed to be granted within a time period of 7 days. If it is not done properly, then it will be marked for the purpose of site verification. What if that person does not opt for Aadhaar authentication? If he does not opt for Aadhaar authentication, then definitely if he says no, I don't want to go for Aadhaar authentication, okay, if it ticks for that no for Aadhaar authentication, then in such a case, his application will be directly marked for site verification, and his registration will be deemed to be granted after a period of 30 days, right? Acha, now similar way. Okay, now let's say if someone was registered maybe in the year 2017, 18, etc., when Aadhaar authentication was not mandatory. Now those people are already continuing under GST. So what about their Aadhaar authentication? So they say that even those people are required to do their Aadhaar authentication either by using the Aadhaar authentication link or by uploading the eKYC document, same way, of two persons, one from the owner or from the management, and one person is of the primary authorized signatory. These two persons will have to do their Aadhaar authentication compulsorily. Okay, now how to do the Aadhaar authentication? That is the next question. In case of a new applicant, okay, in case of a new applicant, that person will select, okay, that yes, they want to go for Aadhaar authentication. The Aadhaar authentication link will be sent and all those things will be done. Now, do you recollect we studied when Aadhaar authentication is done and no site verification is required, then within 7 days from the date of submission of application, the application will be accepted or the registration will be granted. Now that within 7 days it will be granted, but provided Aadhaar authentication is completed by the applicant. Yes, so there is a definition given here, that is, can you see here, date of submission of the application, below is written there. Date of submission of application means what? When your part B was submitted, part B of GST REG 01 was submitted, from that day 15 days. Okay, from that day, within 15 days, or the actual date of Aadhaar authentication, whichever is earlier, this date will be considered as if you have submitted your form. Okay, as if you have submitted your form, and from this date, within a period of 7 days, your registration will be granted to you. Okay, because what will happen, suppose let's say today I submit the form, okay, but I do Aadhaar authentication a little late. Okay, if I do Aadhaar authentication a little late, then in between this period, registration cannot be granted to you, because registration can be granted only after Aadhaar authentication is completed, right? So they have given you a deemed date when you have submitted the application. Okay, what is that deemed date? 15 days. 15 days from the date of submission of the application form, or date of Aadhaar authentication, whichever is earlier, that becomes your submission date, and from that day, within a period of 7 days, the registration will be granted to you. If not granted, then 30 days period will be applicable, right? Because if Aadhaar authentication is not done, let's say for example, then we will go for site verification, and if we go for site verification, then registration is deemed to be granted within 30 days, but only after doing the site verification. right? Then they had started with this pilot project in Gujarat where they said that to nullify all the fake applications, to improve the registration process, etc., they had introduced this biometric Aadhaar authentication process for high risk applicants, which the system is going to identify on the basis of data analytics and risk parameters. Okay, so when any particular person goes on the GST portal and he applies, then the GST portal will identify that he is a high risk kind of a person. So we will not allow him to do the online Aadhaar authentication. We will mark that person as a risky person, and then he will have to go to the GST facilitation center. He will have to go to the GST facilitation center along with his original documents and with photographs and whatever documents are prescribed. All those things will be taken to the facilitation center, and there, by way of checking his biometric authentication, the application process will be completed, and later on the acknowledgement will be issued to such a person. Are you clear with this? Okay, so this is the process. This is the process of this 7 days, and all this calculation is done from this particular date. And for high risk, this is the process. Now, this is not implemented throughout the country. This is just a pilot, a trial project which is going on in Gujarat. If successful, then they are going to make it applicable for the entire country. Okay, similarly, same procedure they have given for persons already registered. See, now the persons already registered, to them we are not going to grant a new registration certificate. So that 7 days and 30 days time period is not applicable here. Here they are just telling that if you were already registered at such a time when Aadhaar authentication was not mandatory. So now when the Aadhaar authentication has been made mandatory, you also have to log into the GST portal, and you also have to get your Aadhaar authentication done. Okay, if you do not do your Aadhaar authentication, you will not be able to submit the refund application forms, and you will not be able to submit the application for revocation of cancellation of registration. These forms cannot be submitted. Okay, so see how they have restricted you when you are a new applicant. Okay, at the time of making the application, at the time of making the registration application, at that time only you have to opt for Aadhaar authentication. If opted, do it. If not opted, we will come and do your site verification. If you are a risky person, you anyway have to come to the facilitation center. We will do your Aadhaar authentication, biometric that too. Okay, and if you are an already registered person, please complete your Aadhaar authentication. If not done, no problem, continue everything as it is. But someday, if we cancel your registration, you cannot file an application for revocation of cancellation. And someday, if you require refund of duties paid, that refund application will not be accepted if till the time you have not done the Aadhaar authentication. Okay, then sometimes it can so happen that both in case of new applicant also and in case of existing applicant also. In these cases, what if the Aadhaar number is still not assigned to any person? Okay, on this page you will see about new applicant. On the next page you will see about already registered persons. What if that person is not given the Aadhaar? Then in that case, other alternative methods of authentication will be provided. Example, let's say if they have just applied for their Aadhaar, so Aadhaar enrollment slip is given before allotment of the Aadhaar number. Use that slip. Or let's say you can use a copy of your passport, you can use a copy of your driving license, you can use the copy of your bank statement, bank passbook with your photo, you can use your voter ID. These can be used. Okay, these can be used till the time you do not have Aadhaar. And once you get the Aadhaar, okay, within 30 days, make sure that you complete the authentication. Right? Now, there are some persons who are not required to take Aadhaar. Example, NRTP, such a person. Then your central government department, state government department, local authority, municipal corporations, PSUs, etc., United Nations, Foreign Embassy, UIN persons, they are not required to have Aadhaar. If they are not required to have Aadhaar, they are exempted from the Aadhaar authentication also. Very clear with this? Yes. Acha. Now, then there were two things which were amended. One was furnishing of bank account details. So they are telling that except in two cases, except for TDS and TDS deductor and TCS collector, except for these two cases, they are telling that registered person, after he has been granted the registration, he can go and submit his bank account details later on also. Okay, ma'am, later on means till what date that is allowed? Earlier of 2 dates. 30 days from the date of grant of registration certificate or filing of your first GSTR1 or IFF. Okay, earlier of these 2 dates. I'll repeat, 30 days from the date of grant of registration certificate or filing of first time GSTR1 or IFF. Okay, whichever is earlier, within this much time, you can go to the GST portal and then submit your bank account details later on. Okay, earlier you had to submit it at the time of your application form itself. Now they are telling that you can submit your application form, you will get the registration certificate. Later on also you can go and submit your bank account details, but this is not applicable in case of TDS and TCS collector. For them, they have to submit it beforehand only. Right. Next one, physical verification. Okay, now physical verification can be done by the proper officer in two cases. One is let's say they granted you the registration, everything was okay, they said, but then after granting you the registration, they told you that now we want to do physical verification. Can they do or they cannot do? Definitely they can do. So if they are coming to your premises and they are doing the physical verification, they are clicking pictures of your premises, no problem, they are allowed to do that, but they will have to upload all the information about verification report, photos, etc. on the GST common portal within a time period of 15 working days from the date of verification, so that even you will come to know what is the conclusion of your verification report. Right. Similarly, another thing that we have already studied is, can physical verification be done before grant of registration certificate also? Yes, remember we had studied where Aadhaar authentication was not done, or when the proper officer is of the opinion that site verification should be done, etc. So yes, definitely it can be done, and in that case, within a time period of 30 days of your online application submission, within that much time your registration certificate should be granted, right? So basically the officers have got a time period of 30 days in that case. So they are telling that they will come for physical verification, they will do the verification, they will click the pictures. All this information should be uploaded by the proper officer on the common portal at least 5 days before the expiry of that 30 days. 30 days was the total time period for giving you the registration. 5 days before the expiry of 30 days, all the information should be put on the website of the GST portal. Are you understanding this? Yes, and once your application has been approved, after that a certificate of registration in form number GST REG 06, which will show your place of business, principal place of business, additional place of business, this will be uploaded on the common portal. Okay, obviously not a public document, but once you log in to the GST website, it will show you that this is your registration certificate. You can download that certificate and you can keep it, and GST number, registration number, okay, which is the PAN based GST registration number, that will also be communicated to the applicant within 3 days of grant of registration. Okay, so normally the registration will be granted within 7 days or 30 days as the case may be, right? Once it has been granted, after that you will be given that registration certificate, and GSTIN number, your GST registration number, final number, will be communicated to you within a time period of 3 days. And once you receive your GST certificate, you have to display it in your principal place of business and every additional place of business, and wherever you are putting your name board, okay, outside your office, etc. generally, there you also have to mention your GST number, registration number has to be mentioned there. Okay, now another point was effective date of registration. Okay, effective date. Now suppose I was required to go and make an application for registration within a time period of 30 days. Right, if I go within a time period of 30 days, my effective date of registration will be the date when I became liable for registration. Okay, if I went beyond the period of 30 days, then in that case GST registration will be valid from the date of actual grant of registration certificate. Okay, we have discussed this in the earlier chapters also. Then we started discussing about CTP and NRTP. Okay, CTP is such a person, a casual taxable person who is having his own fixed place of business in one particular state, but now he wants to go to some other state and he wants to do some taxable supplies from such other state. Okay, but that is not going to be for a very long period, that is going to be occasional for a very small period. So that person can make an application, he can get himself registered in such other state as a casual taxable person. Okay, and similarly NRTP is a person who is coming from the other country, who does not have a place of business in India, who does not have a fixed residence also here in India, but he wants to come to India and he wants to do supply of goods or services here in India, whether or not in course or furtherance of business. Okay, whether or not in course or furtherance of business. So the major difference between CTP and NRTP, CTP was having a fixed place of business in one of the state, he is not having a fixed place of business in that other state. Okay, example, business exhibition, I want to go and participate in a business exhibition, let's say for 10 days in the other state. So I'm supplying the goods from such other state. So I will have to get myself registered as a CTP. Okay, and CTP can do this only in the course or furtherance of business. But for NRTP, he is not having any place of business, any residence here in India, and it is not necessary also for him to do it in the course of business. Okay, now these two persons, CTP, NRTP, they have to get themselves registered at least 5 days before commencement of business here in the other state, or whenever they are commencing their business in India. For CTP, whenever he is commencing his business in the other state, 5 days before such commencement. Whenever NRTP is going to start his business here in India, or whenever he is going to do that supply here in India, 5 days before this, he will have to get himself registered as NRTP. And both of these persons, whenever they are getting registered, remember we had discussed about whenever they make an application, they are granted a TRN, temporary reference number. Okay, this TRN will be given to them only if they pay advance deposit of tax. Okay, means government is playing really very safe. Government says that since you are doing the business occasionally here, so I want you to estimate the tax liability and pay that advance tax deposit, which will be credited to your electronic cash ledger in advance, and only then we are going to register you as a CTP or as a NRTP. Right? In case of CTP and NRTP, your certificate will be valid for a very short period. Okay, means whatever number of days you have written in the application. Let's say I have written in the application that I want registration for 30 days. Okay, so whatever period is written in the application, or 90 days, whichever is earlier. Only for these many number of days, registration will be granted to you, and that 90 days, ad hoc 90 days time period that was given to you, that can be extended by another period of 90 days. Okay, so how will we frame this in a statement form? The registration certificate in case of CTP and NRTP will be valid for a period which is specified in the registration certificate. Okay, which will be specified in the registration certificate, or 90 plus 90 days, whichever is earlier. If someone wants to, okay, now let's say we applied, okay, normally I'm giving you an example. Let's say I applied that I want registration for a period of 100 days. Okay, initially the government will tell me no, that you will get the registration normally for a maximum period of 90 days. Okay, then you can get it extended for another 90 days. Now when I'm getting it further extended by 90 days, total 90 plus 90 days, right? When I'm getting it extended for the next 90 days, before that also I have to pay the advance tax deposit. Right? And whenever the CTP is paying this advance tax of GST, he can take the benefit of input tax credit, and he can pay the balance amount of tax as advance tax deposit. Okay, now let's say if I say that I want CTP registration for a period of more than 180 days. There is a long running exhibition that is going on, let's say for a year, and I want to participate. Government says no, CTP concept was valid for a maximum period of 90 plus 90 days, not beyond that. If you want to get yourself registered for a period beyond that, get yourself registered as a normal taxpayer. Now when I am getting registered as a normal taxpayer, I will say that I don't have a fixed establishment in such other state. Government says no problem. The consent letter or that allotment letter from the exhibition organizer that you would have got, that can act as the proof for your place of business. Use it, get yourself normally registered. Once that exhibition is over, you can surrender your registration. Are you clear with this? Okay, then we went to the next section, that is section number 26, which was very, very simple, which was talking about deemed registration. Deemed registration means we studied that registration under GST is not tax wise. Okay, means if I have registered myself under CGST law, means I am registered for CGST, SGST, UTGST, IGST, GST compensation cess, etc. Okay, so registration or all the procedures, whatever we are studying, that is same for all the types of taxes there. Then we studied different provisions for TDS and TCS collectors. Any particular person who is getting registered only for the purpose of deducting or collecting TCS, that person will be granted registration within a time period of 3 working days from the date of submission of their application. Now there can be a possibility that I am registered in one particular state, but I want to deduct TDS, I want to collect TCS from some other state. So such other state's name will be written in part A, and the place where I am having my principal place of business, that state's name will be written in part B. So these states, there can be some difference in the states which are mentioned in part A and part B of the application form. Once you realize that you are no more liable to collect TDS or to collect TCS or deduct the TDS, then you can make an application to the proper officer and you can cancel your registration. Right? Similarly, we had studied for OIDAR and online money gaming. These persons are from outside India. They are providing some services here in India. So for them, again, it is not going to be a PAN-based registration because they are not having their PAN. So separate format will be prescribed, and for them, separate terms, condition, rules, regulations will be prescribed for the purpose of registration. Are you clear with the entire provisions for registrations which we had actually started from section number 22? Yes, person liable for registration, and then procedure we started from section number 25. I hope you are clear till here. Yes. Let's start with the revision of the next sections, that is section number 28, 29, 30, last three sections of the chapter. Section number 28 talks about your amendment of registration. Whatever information we had furnished to the GST common portal, or whatever we had submitted on the GST common portal, if there are any changes in the same, then we can do amendments in the same. These amendments are divided into two. One is core fields and the other one is non-core fields. Example of core fields can be when there is any change in the name of the business, but not a PAN change, because PAN change will lead to a new registration altogether. The next one, when there is any addition or deletion in the stakeholders, changes in partners, changes in promoter, changes in whole-time directors, etc., changes in karta. Okay. Or next one is whenever there is any change in the place of business, but not in the other state, because once you go to the other state, again a new registration will be required. All these changes will be called as core field changes, and all the other changes will be called as non-core field changes. Whenever there is a core field change, okay, whenever there is a core field change, you will have to go and submit your details. Okay, you will have to go and submit your details on the GST common portal, and then within a time period of 15 days from the date of such change, and within the next 15 days the proper officer will check and it will get satisfied whether your amendments are proper, or the supporting documents are proper, or those are not proper. Okay, in case of core fields, whenever there are any changes, the changes take place from the date of such event. Okay, but in case of non-core fields, example, mobile number is changing, email ID is changing, or any other changes happen, okay, then in that case, it will be assumed, or it will be deemed that changes have taken place from the date of submission of the online application form. Okay, now just try to understand. In case of core field, you go and submit it on the GST portal, and then the GST portal forwards the application to the proper officer, and then he decides it, okay, whether the amendment should be allowed or the amendment should not be allowed. But in case of non-core fields, there is no intervention of proper officer. Okay, in case of non-core fields, you just do the amendment by yourself on the GST portal, and that's it. The date when you submit that information on the GST portal, that date is considered as if the changes in non-core fields have happened. Okay, now there is a particular method of, or there is a particular time limit for doing this core changes and non-core changes. Non-core changes are sorted. Okay, non-core changes means less important changes. You do it on the GST common portal and it gets approved. Okay, auto approved, and then the registration certificate also gets amended because of that. Achha, but in case of core areas, we go and submit the application on the GST portal within 15 days. Then within the next 15 days, either the proper officer will grant me the approval and it will amend my certificate, or alternatively, if that proper officer is not satisfied with my supporting documents, then it will issue within these 15 days only. Okay, the proper officer will issue me a show cause notice, to which I am supposed to reply within a time period of 7 days. Once I reply to that within a time period of 7 days, then the proper officer will give me the final decision within a period of next 7 days. If proper officer is satisfied, well and good. Okay, it will do the registration certificate amendment. If it is not satisfied, then my amendment application will be rejected. Are you clear with this? This was all about your section number 28. And then going on to the next one, that is section number going to the next one, that is section number 29 and section number 30. So in this case, in case of section number 29 and section number 30, we are going to talk about suspension of registration, okay, or cancellation of registration, and revocation of cancellation of registration. Okay, there are three different things. First, just try to understand the title. Cancellation of registration, you understand, maybe there are some contraventions, etc., or if you want to close down your business, or there is a change in constitution of business, etc., because of that you want to cancel your registration. Okay, it can be again done suo moto by yourself, or it can be done by the department also. Next one, temporarily, if the department wants to cancel your registration, it can, instead of doing the cancellation, it can give a suspension. Okay, means it will be cancelled but for a temporary period. Okay, and the last one is revocation of cancellation, means the department has cancelled your registration, but now you go and request that, sir, please revoke my cancellation of registration. Okay, so all these things we are going to study from section number 29 to section number 30, along with rules, rule number 20 to rule number 23. Okay, now first of all, the cancellation can be of two ways. Either it will be voluntarily cancel. I will go and voluntarily make an application to the department that I wish to cancel. Okay, maybe there is a change in constitution of business, proprietorship to partnership. Okay, or maybe there is death of the deceased, there is a death of any particular registered person. In all such cases, the registration can be voluntarily cancelled, or it can be suo moto cancelled by the department also, when maybe the department has got reasons to believe that you were involved in some contraventions. Then in that case, your registration can be cancelled that way also. Right now, in which cases it can be cancelled? Okay, in which cases it can be cancelled suo moto by the registered person. Example, again I'll repeat if you want. The business got discontinued, there was a death of the registered person, there was change in business constitution, there was a case of amalgamation, demerger, etc., or that taxable person is no longer liable to be registered as per section number 22 or as per section number 24. Then in such cases his registration can be cancelled. Okay, and other cases where the department is cancelling the registration. Okay, now when will the department cancel? If you are not able to fulfill, or if you have contravened some provisions. Okay, which provisions, ma'am? Which provisions have been contravened? Now let's say if you are not conducting business from your principal place of business. Okay, not even from your principal place of business, not even from your additional place of business, means something fishy is there, some lafda is there, right? Or if you are not at all issuing, okay, or let's say you issue invoices, or you issue bills, okay, to the other person, but actually there is no supply of goods or services, so fake invoices are being issued. Or if there is any contravention of section number 171, which talks about anti-profiteering measure, or if there is a violation of rule number 10A, that is not furnishing the bank account details within a time period of 30 days, okay, or if you are availing input tax credit fraudulently, okay, or there is a big difference. Okay, this is very, very important. There is a difference between the turnover that you have shown in GSTR1 and the turnover that you are showing in GSTR3B. There is a big difference. Or if you are violating the provisions of rule number 86B, which was talking about at least 1% of the tax liability should be paid by way of electronic cash ledger, right? Rest you can pay by electronic credit ledger, but at least 1% should be paid by way of electronic cash ledger, right? Or if, let's say, if you're a monthly filer of GST returns, you have not filed the returns continuously for a period of 6 months, or if you're a quarterly return filer, you have not filed the quarterly returns for 2 tax periods. 2 tax periods means 2 quarters at least. Okay, then in such cases, you have contravened the provisions of the GST law, and if you have contravened the provisions of GST law, then the department, after issuing a show cause notice on you and after giving you a reasonable opportunity of being heard, it can cancel your registration. Okay, similarly, if there is a composition taxpayer who was required to file the return annually, and from the due date 3 months have expired or 3 months have elapsed and that person has still not filed the return, then the registration can be cancelled. Or if some person got voluntarily registered but still from 6 months it has not done any business activities, or if that person has obtained the registration fraudulently by suppression of any facts or misrepresentation of facts or by giving false information, then in such cases, after issuing a show cause notice on you, they have got the powers. Okay, they have got the powers to cancel your registration. Okay, but sometimes it can so happen that the proper officer, instead of cancelling the registration, if there are some other proceedings going on against you, then it cannot cancel your registration immediately, then it will suspend your registration. Okay. And by suspending the registration during this period of suspension, I cannot do a taxable supply, means I cannot issue tax invoices and I cannot file my returns. Are you understanding this? Yes. Now listen. Now let's say if I have suo motu applied for cancellation. Okay, if I have suo motu applied for cancellation of registration, then in that case, imagine I went for cancellation, but the department temporarily suspended. So suspension will be applicable from which date? Okay, suspension will be applicable the date on which I am submitting the application for cancellation, or the with effect from date which I am telling the department that I want to get it cancelled from so and so date. Okay, let's say I go and make an application on 1st of Jan, but I go and I say that I want it to get cancelled from 1st of February, means after a month. So out of these two dates, whichever is later, that will become the effective date. Okay, that will be considered as the effective date of suspension. But similarly, suppose if the department has cancelled my registration, then the effective date of suspension will be determined by that proper officer. I cannot say anything. Okay, they will suspend my registration, but one extra provision is applicable. Okay, for 2 points, there is one extra provision applicable. Suppose if there was that difference between GSTR 1 and GSTR 3B. Okay, I showed more sales in GSTR 1 so that the other person will get more credit, but I showed less sales in my GSTR 3B, so the tax payable will be less. So this is a big fraud. So in this case, and if you have not furnished your bank details as per rule number 10A, in these two cases, they will suspend. That is one thing. Plus, they will issue a show cause notice on me and they will tell me to reply within a time period of 30 days that why such big difference between GSTR 1 and GSTR 3B. Are you understanding? Because that can lead to big amount of frauds there. So this was, yes, this was one particular thing that we studied there. And if my registration has been suspended, I have already told you we cannot make any taxable supply. We cannot make any taxable supply means I cannot issue a tax invoice and I cannot collect the taxes from any other person, and I will not be required to file my GST returns. Are you clear with this? Okay, now listen. For example, let's say if the officer has now passed the cancellation order on me. Okay, if it has passed an cancellation order, what about the suspension order? The suspension order will be revoked because now ultimately cancellation is done. Okay, now what if those proceedings come to an end? If those proceedings come to an end, then even suspension will come to an end and that will lead to cancellation. Are you clear with this? Yes, one relief that has been provided. Just now we studied that if we did not furnish the bank account details. Okay, if we did not furnish the bank account details under rule number 10A. Okay, that was also one of the pointer. Can you see the D point written on the board? Yes, even that was one of the pointer in which my registration can be cancelled by the department. But now they are telling that, okay, we will condone the delay. Suppose if later on, if you go and submit the bank details, then by that time, if your registration is not yet cancelled, then your suspension will be revoked and you can continue with your registration. And now they have made it system based. Okay, as per the amendment, now they have made it system based. As soon as you furnish your bank account details in the system, GST portal itself will remove your suspension and you can continue with your registration. Okay, so this was one benefit that has been given. Similarly, one more benefit has been given for non-filing of returns. Okay, suppose if I was a monthly filer, I did not file the returns for 6 months continuously, or if I was a quarterly filer, I did not file the returns for 2 quarters. Okay, or if I was a composition taxpayer, okay, and I did not file it for a period of 3 months from the due date, and in that case they say that okay, no problem, you file the returns, you pay the taxes, you pay the interest, you pay the penalty, you pay the late fee, no problem, we will not cancel your registration. But all these benefits are available only when suspension order was passed on you and not cancellation. Once cancelled, you cannot do anything. Okay, once cancelled, you cannot do anything under this particular section. Okay, now the next thing which is coming up here is, yes, the procedure about cancellation. Once either you apply for cancellation or once a department cancels, at that time you will have to, suppose if you go and make an application, then can we say you will have to submit the cancellation application on the GST portal? Yes, Aja, important thing that you have to do. Okay, important thing that you have to do is whatever stock is there, okay, as on the date preceding the date of cancellation, the input tax credit on that stock needs to be reversed. Okay, similarly, whatever capital goods and plant and machinery you have, okay, from that, after subtracting 5% for every quarter of usage, whatever is the ITC which is pertaining to the remaining life, that needs to be reversed, right? That is, it will be debited to your cash ledger or credit ledger. Are you clear with this? Yes. Acha, but now if there is a suo motu cancellation by the department, then in that case he cannot directly cancel it. He will have to give me a show cause notice. He will have to give me a reasonable opportunity of being heard, and when he gives me the show cause notice, I will have to reply back within a time period of 7 days, and depending upon my reply, the proper officer will determine that whether my registration should be cancelled or it should be kept active. Okay, but don't forget that point. If returns were filed late, then the proper officer should allow me the condonation, and if I file the returns, okay, I pay the tax, interest, penalty, etc., then my certificate should not be cancelled. Are you clear with this? Yes. Okay, then ITC point etc. we have already discussed, that is applicable in both the cases. And the next point was, yes, now the next thing which comes up here is section number 30, which talks about revocation of cancellation of registration. Okay, revocation of cancellation of registration means what? The department had passed the order for cancellation, okay, either from a particular date or from retrospective effect, doesn't matter. We still have the option, okay, we can still go and make an application to the proper officer that, sir, please revoke my cancellation application. Now let's say the department so moto cancelled my registration. Okay, now it will serve me the order of cancellation. Okay, it will serve me the order of cancellation. Just try to understand. Okay, it will give me a show cause notice to which I was supposed to reply within a period of 7 days. Imagine my reply is not satisfactory. Okay, imagine my reply is not satisfactory, so it will pass a cancellation order. Okay, it has given me the cancellation order, it was served on me. Okay, once it got served, after that, do I still have the option of going and filing the revocation application? Yes, I can go within a period of 90 days from the date when the cancellation order was served on me. Okay, I can go within a period of how many days? 90 days, and this 90 days can be further extended by commissioners by a maximum period of 180 days. Within these many days, I should go and make an application for revocation of cancellation. Okay, then for that purpose, the proper officer will take a time period of, once I have filed the revocation application, proper officer will take a time period of 30 days to see my request. Okay, then after that, once the proper officer takes a time period of 30 days, after that either it can say yes or it can say no. Okay, but if it is saying yes, that okay, your application is correct, means my registration will continue now. But if he says no, your revocation application is also nonsense, then the proper officer, before rejecting, it will have to give me a show cause notice that why we should not reject your application, to which I will reply within a time period of 7 days. Okay, to which I will reply within a time period of 7 days, and finally, proper officer's final reply will be received by me within a time period of 30 days from the date of my reply. Are you understanding this? And on that basis, we will come to know whether my registration is finally active or it has gone. Are you clear with this? Acha, what if my registration was cancelled? Okay, what if my registration was cancelled because I failed to file the returns? Then in that case, we should be given an opportunity to rectify our defaults, and if our defaults are rectified, then in that case, my registration can be again restored. Now, two things which are coming up here. They say that once your registration is cancelled, okay, after that you will be getting a time period to revoke that cancellation. Yes, but the system says that the day when your application was cancelled, after that, for this period, for the next future periods, you will not be allowed to file the returns. Okay, you will not be allowed to file the returns. Now listen, where the problem happened. They say that what the GST law says that, okay, see the difference between GST law and the GST portal. Okay, GST law says that if your registration has been cancelled today and if you're going for revocation as on the, like, let's say after 90 days or 180 days, then you have to file all the returns till the date of making the application of revocation. Then only we will accept your revocation application. But when I went to the GST portal, I saw that the portal was not allowing me to file the returns for this period. That is, once my application got cancelled, for the later periods, it was not allowing me to file the returns. So they said, okay, no problem. This is portal's issue. So what you have to do is, if your application has been revoked, okay, if you have filed an application for revocation of cancellation, then in that case, once your application has been accepted, after that, within a period of 30 days, please go and file the returns for this particular period. Okay, can you file the return for the earlier period before cancellation? Yes, that the system will allow. Okay, but let's say if my order got cancelled from, for example, 1st April 2024, it will allow me to file all the old returns, but it will not allow me to file all the new returns. Okay, when will it allow me to file all the new returns? Only after my cancellation has been revoked. Are you understanding this? Yes, those pointers are given up here. And this was all about your registration chapter. Yes, full of procedures, full of some number of days, either 15 days or 7 days or 30 days. Okay, but just read it in, parts. It will be simple. Yes.